Welcome back to the Anxious to Secure podcast, 7 rules how to thrive with an avoidant. So this is for everyone who has an anxious attachment style and is in a relationship with an avoidant attached partner. I am, and I have written down basically 7 rules I realized helped me and my relationship a lot, that created a lot of safety and regulation in our relationship, and that impacted my partner as well. And if you have an anxious attachment style and wonder if this is for you, I want to quickly, before I go into the 7 rules, explain a little bit the dynamic overall, what might be happening for you. Disclaimer, I'm not a therapist or doctor. This content is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It's not intended to diagnose, treat, or heal any mental health condition. If you're in an abusive relationship or dealing with severe mental health challenges, always seek professional advice. So you're probably stuck in this anxious avoidant cycle. So this might be you, where there is a situation happening which is neutral, but we are making machines human. So we either put it into a black and white box. Let's say your partner comes home from work and they're a little bit quieter than usual, a little bit stressed. And we make this mean something, usually about ourselves. So the anxious is then usually triggered based on their own experiences and then core wounds and beliefs and unfelt emotions in our body. And then we make this mean something personal about ourselves. We are then triggered, our wounds are triggered, like our abandonment wound and our not enoughness wound and not capable wound, not capable of feeling emotions, handling ups and downs and uncertainty in relationships. And we then are triggered and leaning in more towards the situation, towards our partner. And this then triggers our avoidant partner. So for example, leaning in and chasing might look like you keep asking him, hey, are you okay? What's going on for you? And for example, a secure person would ask once or twice maximum, and then they're able to see, okay, my partner is able to self-soothe themselves. They're able to handle the situation. I trust them. However, an anxious attached person, they don't trust the situation. They don't trust that the future is going to work out itself. They don't trust themselves really to be okay no matter what. So they then keep try to fix the situation, the mood. The avoidant partner might be, needing time for themselves a bit. So they keep asking, hey, are you okay? Can I do anything for you? Maybe even, overcompensating in cooking an extravagant meal or just checking in, and even just like maybe just watching the partner. So then the avoidant partner notices this, the leaning in movement, which always the anxious attachment usually downplays. It's like, hey, I just care about you so much. Why are you pulling away now? So the avoidant partner pulls away, maybe just is on their phone, scrolling, engaging in a conversation, which then triggers your anxious attachment even more, where you think, hey, I know it, see, my beliefs of you pulling away, of they don't like me, is now even more confirmed. So you're triggered more, have your beliefs and your thoughts about your partner that they are now pulling away from you have confirmed, and you're chasing even more, no matter if this is mentally, physically, emotionally. And maybe you're starting with criticism, like, you always do this, you're never there for me, you never want to talk about your day. You're going on and on about this, and your avoidant partner is even more flooded. It could look like they're overwhelmed, they're shutting down completely, or they're getting very defensive, very typical. If one person starts with criticism, the other usually ends with defensiveness. And these are 2 killers of the relationship, according to the Gottman. There are a couple of married researchers who have They're married and they're researchers. They're researching married couples for over decades, and they're really figuring out what makes marriage and also relationships successful and when are they getting divorced. And 2 of these killers of a relationship, meaning this will lead to a divorce eventually and a breakdown, is one is criticism, the other one is defensiveness, for example. And there's also stonewalling and contempt. But this is often happening here. The anxious often starts with criticism, like, you statements, you never do this, you always do this, or you only cleaned up the kitchen once. But while then the avoidant feels very attacked, feels very judged, and then gets very defensive and shuts down or said, oh yeah, you also did this last week, for example. And this cycle continues, and eventually you make up for a moment. Maybe the anxious is using the fawning response, meaning the people-pleasing coping method gets activated, where you like, oh, this feels really uncomfortable, or maybe even the avoidant partner, because you both don't want conflict. Conflict is for both of you very unsafe. So you make up temporarily, you like, push everything under the rug. And then until the next situation happens, where either you lean in too much or the avoidant partner pulls it back way too much. And that's the cycle. And overall, there is this huge belief of the anxious has the conditional belief of, I'm only safe if I'm close. I'm very close. I need emotional and physical closeness in relationships, not just romantic relationships, but also friendships and families and with colleagues. Otherwise, I can't thrive and I can't feel safe. While the avoidant attachment has the opposite. They have the conditional safety belief of, I'm only safe when I have my independence, when there's space and I have choice and options and I have autonomy. And so it's basically the opposite. Let's get into the 4 factors, the 4 conditions I think are extremely important to figure out, can this anxious avoidant relationship actually work? And this is something I'm really strong about based on my own experiences and based on now working with many, many clients over the past 3 years? I can't remember, 3 years, I think now. So the question is really, can this relationship work? And for me, there's a huge factor 1 involved. How can I show this? Factor 1 is yes, under these conditions. And condition 1 is only, it just takes 1 for you to break the cycle that we just talked about. So what is a cycle? Like that one chases, the other pulls away. It just takes 1, because the biggest myth is really that, the other person has to do it. It takes 2 to tango. And yes, it's true. As you've seen, one person does something and the other reacts. But imagine, let's go back to the cycle for a second. If one person would regulate and do something different, let's say you wouldn't lean in too much, you would accept your partner's need for space. Let's say the situation is your partner comes comes back from work and is very stressed and shutting down a little bit. You give him 30 minutes space, or half an hour, or it's the same, or 1 hour, whatever he needs, and then you reconnect. Then you either make dinner together or is already prepared from the day before, and then you have a bit more quality time. So you basically, what just takes 1 to break this cycle. Or even maybe your partner doesn't pull away as much anymore during conflict or during bigger events, and is able to reconnect with you even during stressful times. So basically it just takes 1 to break this cycle. But you can always just point the fingers like, oh, my partner should be the one. But then you will never get the cycle broken, because that is actually point 2. I think we're going to get into in a second. But basically, number 1 is one has to break the cycle and the other will follow, because it creates a ripple effect. And either you can be the cycle breaker, or you can always be in this victim mentality and nothing's going to ever change. So basically how this might look for you is you learn to self-soothe, to regulate your own emotions and to meet your own needs. Then the second step is inner work is looking very differently for everyone. Usually for someone who has an anxious attachment style, the inner work might look going to therapy, reading millions of books and listening to all the podcasts. It might look like 120%. And it looks very active work. You see someone who goes into this often from a place of, I have to fix myself, I have to fix the relationship, otherwise I'm not safe. Versus if the avoidant does the work, it's very different. But they're still doing the inner work if one starts to break the cycle. For example, in my relationship, once I did my inner work, it created a ripple effect on my partner, even though it was much slower. So there was maybe more passive work, maybe more like a 20%, for example. And then the third factor I found is you really have to change yourself first. You can't
change the other person. You can't expect going into a relationship and beginning loving everything during the honeymoon phase, and then 3-6 months later, 1 year later, picking everything up that you think they should be doing differently, dressing differently, eating differently, from routine, from tiny little things. That is just your anxious attachment and flaring up again, increasing the standards. I think you have to do the opposite. If you're dating, you have to increase your standards, have really high standards for yourself. And as you go along into the relationship, you should decrease your standards a bit, because usually then you're getting very picky and hyper focus on these nitty gritty bits that are not really essentials, on how often your partner, I don't know, dyes his hair. Okay, that's a stupid example, but if he smokes or not. And for me, that is example for our relationship. I really don't like when partner smokes. However, me always criticizing him is not getting us anywhere. I can share once or twice that it's not nice for me to see when he's doing things like it's impacting his health. But in the end, I have to let go. I can't change who he is. I can only support in him in his goals. And it's a much better relationship vibe. And if he really crosses boundaries, or in the end has completely different goals that can't meet my long-term goals as well, let's say he wants to move to America, or he's voting for Trump, would support this kind of political values, and I don't, that would be a non-negotiable for me. Yeah, so stop fixating on what they should do and focus on what can you do actually. Can you regulate yourself so in conflict it doesn't explode, or can you walk away if your partner does? And the last one is this one. It's like their capacity meets yours. So after all of this, if you have been the one who broke the cycle, initiated it the first, if you see the needle is moving and things are changing, and if you're really focusing on yourself and it's still not enough, they're still not showing up in the level that you really needed to, that's okay. You can still walk away. You can still not change your mind, but you can still decide the capacity is not meeting your capacity. You need someone who's more affectionate or more consistent. And that's okay. So for me, these are the 4 factors if this relationship can really work. So now let's get really into the actual podcast and the 7 rules how you can support your partner. I'm going to try to make it short and sweet so you can really ride along and to make it very practical. So rule number 1 is focus on you. That is extremely important, because if you focus on yourself, you are centering yourself and you're decentering your partner, because in the end, you are the main character in your life. It's not your partner. They are just a side character. In the end, anxious attachment thinks they're not good enough and everyone else is good enough. So it's really hard for them to focus on themselves. But that is a key factor, not just for themselves, but also to support the avoidant partner. Because right now you might be, hypervigilant. You're watching him, what he's doing, and they can sense that. And it's a lot of emotional pressure, and they don't like to be watched. And it's actually exactly the opposite of what they want, because in childhood, they were criticized. They were had this experience where their caregivers were there around a lot. Like physical presence was really high, and emotional presence was very low. So this is kind of you right now showing up as their caregivers, and that's not really what they want. This is what got you attracted to each other in the first place, but in the end, you will have to shift away from this, and if you want to make it work long term. Right now, I recommend for you to really learn to take care of your own emotions, to self-soothe, to meet your own needs, to fill your own cup, and that reduces pressure. Because they have this wound of I have to take care of everyone else, and it's not safe. It's only safe if I can take care of myself. So closeness, relationships are not really safe for themselves. They are worried about I lose myself in relationships. They have this fear of I'm trapped in relationships if it's too much pressure. Because if we look at their core wounds for just a second, I'm going to pause. So let's just look very quickly at the core wounds from the avoidant attachment partner to really link this to those rules. So the first rule is they have a fear of loss of themselves and independence. So they're really worried they're losing themselves and losing their independence in relationships. So closeness threatens my survival. That's what they think. And closeness leads to pressure. I feel trapped in my relationships and I'll lose myself. That's what they fear. I must rely on myself only to stay. And they have the second core wound of fear of vulnerability and overwhelm. It's all about emotions because emotions felt really risky growing up. So, yeah, emotions are overwhelming to me. They're already too much, and other people's emotions as well. So I fear if I open up, I will lose control, and feelings are really dangerous. And the third core wound is a big one as well, is this huge shame core wound. They're feeling ashamed of deep down of who they are and feeling like I am defective. So something is wrong with me. That's what they think. My needs make me bad. And if you'll see me fully for who I truly am, you won't like it and you reject me. Basically, they have this fear of if you see me, it's dangerous. And that's really important. If I now go over to the rules again. So that's why as well, they don't really want you to watch them 24/7 because that feels like, oh my God, they see me, they watch me. It feels pressure and it feels too much. And it's really hitting on those core wounds. Rule number 2 is give them space, give them freedom, give them options. And that is something that is very hard to fulfill if you have an anxious attachment style, but it's essential. If your partner says something to you and does express their needs, which is hard for them, as we have seen, they feel like their needs are too much, and they're not important and I'm bad, please just listen and give this to them. Anxious attachment often crosses boundaries because it overrides their own needs, because they feel safe in togetherness, closeness, being very close, physical and especially emotional to their partner. But if you can give them what they truly need as well, then afterwards, I swear to you, you will be very close to them more and more gradually, because then you are not giving them the impression, hey, you are basically recreating their childhood. So let them go out with friends. My partner also gives solo traveling. Don't make them feel like you have to ask for permission. He asks me anyway, includes me in his plans. But if you give and add pressure and add rules, it feels very like I don't have freedom. I lose my independence again. Exactly, their own core wounds are being reinforced here. And that you can only do this when you only self-regulate and again focus on yourself. So this builds trust, and open communication, again, is very important. Rule number 3 is be their peace, not their storm. And that will be extremely important for you too. There are a lot of strategies that anxious attachment has learned to create closeness in a relationship, that if I start a fight, if I threaten my partner, I don't know, if I go through his phone, if I criticize, I get what I need subconsciously, even if it's not ideally what I need, but at least I get to have a conversation with him. At least we shout. That feels better than silence, than him walking away, than him going out with friends, or than him shutting down. But this is not going to be good for both of you, right? Because it doesn't feel good either. Being peace doesn't mean giving him everything. It just means self-soothe, learn to regulate your emotions, and then you can always co-regulate afterwards. What did I write here otherwise for peace? Yeah, peace also means that you can bring up stuff. Actually, I share my needs very often with my partner. There's a misconception that you can't bring up your needs with your avoidant partner. However, often anxious attachment brings up their own needs from a place of intensity, overwhelm, because either you held it back so long that then you explode at your partner, or you're setting demands from a place of you should fulfill all of these needs that are very unreasonable just because you haven't filled your own cup yourself. You think your partner is supposed to give you these core needs that you have not met in childhood: safety, through reassurance, or significance, like feeling like you matter. So you think once you go into a relationship, your partner is supposed to do all of these things for you. So it's important that you do this actually for you. You don't do this for your partner, even though that is the title, but this will benefit both of you. Otherwise, in the end, they will leave. You will push them away, and avoidant they think emotions are dangerous, and you're just reinforcing this belief every time you are going into this with such intensity. And they really think, yeah, closeness is dangerous. I knew it. And often I have this thing of avoidance, hide information. They don't disclose everything. Let's say my partner, for example, that he didn't brought up with me once he started smoking again. And first I was, of course, a little bit pissed at that. And in the end, it made so much sense because I used to be very critical when things are happening and I didn't really like it. My emotions were very intense, and I tried to change him, tried to change the behavior. And of course, he knew it wasn't great and he wanted to change that too, but he couldn't. One day he didn't want to in that moment. So if you want your partner to share with you things, you want to be their peace so they can share things with you open too. Now he doesn't hide things from me anymore. He's able to talk to me and I don't judge him for that or like criticize or come with this storm vibe to him at him. Rule number 4 is speak up, but without criticism, without demand, because that's exactly what they have experienced as little kids. So criticism again can sound like you always do this, you never do this, and that is hitting their core wounds of I'm defective, I have to feel ashamed now, I am bad, and you don't want to make your partner feel they're bad, they're not just wrong for what they did, but for who they are, because this is how they will take it if you criticize and constantly micromanage and pretend basically you are their parent, because this is what they will feel like. So you rather want to start with positive reinforcement when they do something good that you like. Say, oh my God, thank you so much for taking care of this yesterday, or thank you for, hearing out what I thought about this. Or if they do invalidate you, say what you would love to hear from them instead. Like over time, I literally expressed what I wanted to hear from my partner instead of doing the opposite. Like, let's say if he was invalidating to me and was just jumping to a conclusion or wasn't really listening, I said, babe, I just need you to listen to me for just 2 minutes. Could you just acknowledge how I feel? And if I was really precise on what I needed, he could give this to me as well. So it's not that they can't handle your needs, it's they often just don't know how to. And you both haven't been modeled like a secure behavior or upbringing. So this is a little bit hard maybe at the beginning, but you both can learn this. And again, you have to be the cycle breaker if you want things to change. Number 5 is slow, gradual intimacy. So as you might know that closeness feels very unsafe for avoidance, right? So during the honeymoon phase, you might feel very close to each other, but eventually there was a point where it gradually decreased over time, where they were maybe pulling away emotionally and even physically. So to start changing that cycle, you want to first, follow the other rules. And secondly, instead of just talking about it over and over, hey, you don't even do this anymore, and again, criticizing them and to making your partner feel like, oh, they're doing something wrong again and again and again, pressure is not the way into intimacy. It is like baby micro steps. You want to express it once or twice, but then baby steps of like just, if it's physical intimacy, like holding hands occasionally for micro moments. And that feels maybe laughable for you because they would be never filling up your cup. But if you started in micro moments without pressure, there's much more room for, hey, you know what, you're going to be heading towards the same goal or a similar goal than as if you would just keep talking about it over and over again, where they just feel more and more disconnected. Again, that's the cycle we were talking about. One has to break it with pressure and overwhelm and demand and criticism. That's not going to go anywhere. The same as we said in the end, if you have filled your own cup with intimacy, and it's still not enough in the end how they show up, that's okay. You can still walk away. However, you still want to test it at least if the needle is moving and if this might be enough. And then number 6 is have a life outside the relationship. And that's a little bit like focus on yourself, right? But here it is also like you want to build a relationship with your family, with other friends, with just connections outside, people you meet on the street, starting to enter new communities. Because if you put all your eggs in one basket, meaning that's your partner. You often wait all day and then dump all your emotions on him. I see this a lot in people who work from home. For example, I do as well. And I don't have many connection points during the day. You are then like starved for emotions. And then as soon as your partner walks home, you're like dumping everything on him. But if then their capacity is not there for hold your emotions, again, we talked about the core wounds, about feeling overwhelmed, pressure, emotions in general, it's not really fair to come with all of this to them at the end of the day. So you want to have one friend where you talk about certain topics, and then another about another topic, and you want to have like mini micro moments to check in with someone, just even if it's just a text, maybe then a phone call, then maybe your work colleagues, then even just when you go to the bakery and just say hi and just exchange a smile and just actually soak it in. And it can be hard if you're someone who is mainly used to get your need filled from male validation, but this will do wonders for you if you allow this to happen as well. Yeah, that is it for that point, I think. And then the last one is number 7, and that is actually accept them for who they are, not for the version who you think they should be, and don't judge them. And that is something I mentioned a little bit in which piece before. And I would say a little bit in number 4, basically, don't criticize, don't add too many demands, don't have all of these high standards, but really see them for who they are. Often we fall in love with people for their silly little flaws, for how opposite they are to us. Anxious attachment really needs order, systems, routine, versus avoidant attachment is the opposite. They are spontaneous, need flexibility, adventure, and suddenly this is the exact thing we later criticize. And okay, why can't you plan the weekend? And why do you wear these silly pink, I don't know, blue trousers for this certain family event? You can't criticize them later for something you might found interesting in the beginning, because this will go back to their core wound of I am bad, I should be ashamed, you won't like it if you truly see me for me. So have them have their little hobbies or weird quirks, and either you accept them for who they are, at least, their little things, or you don't really want to be with them if you can't do this. And I'm not talking about major needs. Let's say they have pulled away completely from you. I'm not talking about major core needs. I'm just talking more overall about their characteristics. Yeah. Let's say they don't call you back ever. If you message them, they only message you every 10th message back. If they're very inconsistent. I'm not talking about things like this. These are core needs, I think. I hope that was clear. Let me know in the YouTube comments or even now on Spotify if any of these rules were helpful. They help me enormously. And thank you so much for listening, and let me know what kind of topics you want to hear more about. Lots of love, and remember, change in your relationship starts with you, thought by thought, action by action, and now episode by episode. Bye bye, Yula.